This is Valerie Van Boeven with the Senior Care Industry Netcast, where leaders with 3 or more years of experience in the senior care market share their advice. So let's get to it in a few sentences. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, Valerie. Thanks. My name is Tim Rowan, and I have been around the home care market for a little more than 3 years. I started with a home care agency as the IT director in 1993. And I've been the editor and primary writer of Home Care Technology, the Rowan report, for the last 22 years.
Yep, you've been around a while. That's true. And I know that a lot of folks who watch this video are going to recognize your face and your name and probably subscribe to your email and your newsletter as well. So thanks for doing the show. And I know today we're going to talk about 2 things that are near and dear to your heart right now, and probably everybody, because it's been so crazy. So let's talk recruiting. Caregiver recruiting. I mean, we recently discussed the challenges with caregiver recruiting. So tell us more about the importance of hiring the right caregivers versus warm bodies. And you used an analogy that was pretty funny to me, or at least made a lot of sense. Right now, a lot of folks feel like they're hiring anybody who can blow up a balloon. So we don't want that to happen. So talk to us about what you've got.
Yeah, it turns out that that's an expensive problem. Everybody tells me, and the reason I've been focused on this recently is because I've been hearing it from so many different quarters, that recruiting and retention is the number one problem in home health and home care today, regardless of public or private payers, every format, and not just home care, but healthcare everywhere. Assisted living, nursing facilities, the hospitals, they're all desperate for people, and it's been made worse, of course, by the pandemic. And so there are nurses and non-medical caregivers leaving the profession. Some of them are getting better offers. There are telemarketing companies that pay more, and so home care agencies find themselves in a real difficult position today, and they have, in general, it seems that they're behaving as though the answer is to recruit and hire as many people as possible, hoping that the few who stay will be enough that you need. What I've been learning, though, is that what that means is you incur the expense of the recruiter. I've talked to a couple agencies that have 2 full-time recruiters. Then you have the expense of the personnel who do the interviewing, the vetting, the looking through the applications. Then you have the expense of the background check and the orientation and training. After all of that is invested, it could take anywhere from 45 to 90 days to recoup your investment. And that is if this new hiree is working full time. Well, people tell me that that doesn't always happen, that people go through the orientation and training, they work for 10, 20, 30 days or not at all. And that expense, whatever it is, I've seen estimates between $2,500 and $4,500 per hire. That expense is just lost if they don't work.
Yep, that's true. This is a lot of money. A lot of time and energy, a lot of, really hard work to get these people in, and the money impact is huge. I mean, in home care, we're dealing with a situation where the margins aren't gigantic anyway, and you add on all of this other challenge, and all of a sudden we're upside down. So it's a really tough time.
So I've been trying to help people to explore better ways than just massive hiring. You know how it works if you use Indeed or Monster or one of those? People only have to fill out an application once, and then they just sit in front of their computer and click, 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 apply, apply, apply. And when you call them for an interview, they say, now, which one were you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so they're not necessarily committed to scheduling an interview or showing up for an interview. So it turns out that the answer to the staff shortage is not interviewing and hiring as many as possible in order to get a few. I've done a research. I've done a case study on an agency in Florida that for every 200 applications, they select 100, they interview 50, they hire 25, and after 30 days, they have 8. And that means that every single one of those that they have gone through orientation and training are a sunk cost, a loss, an absolute cash loss on the books. And so I have been trying to find solutions. And it turns out there's a couple of technology solutions. I'm preparing a talk coming up soon for a couple of state associations where I'm going to lay this out, and I'll have a full hour to do it. But the brief version is you can vet people who have applied by using a technology from a company called MilliMatch that I found. They use a process called applied cognitive linguistics that asks the applicant to answer 5 or 6 questions, 2 or 3 sentences each, and somehow they can come up with a score that will tell you if that person is likely to stay for more than 30 days or not. I don't claim to understand how it works, but they have data that shows that it does work.
Yeah. And when we talked about this before, I mean, this is not the same as personality testing.
No, not at all.
Way different than that.
Yeah, it's not a personality test. It's not AI. It is patented technology that people who have used it early on have discovered that is accurate in predicting who is going to turn out to be a good long-term caregiver and who is not. It's not perfect, and it doesn't override your gut feeling, your judgment during the interview. You still have a choice, but it gives you guidance and helps you to maybe hire people that you normally wouldn't, or maybe reject people that you normally would.
And what you've had someone use it. You've had some feedback already on this.
Yeah, the early tests when they were doing their trials with a couple of franchise organizations, so non-medical home care, and what they did was they found a score that comes out of the MilliMatch questionnaire, and above that score they have found that their new hires stay longer, and below that score they don't. So they've determined the score that works for them, and it might not be the same for everybody, but they've all determined the score that works for them. And by hiring people that come in above that score, they have reduced turnover, many of them in the area of 20 to 30%. So if you think about it, if it actually does cost as much as $4,500 to hire somebody, and then you lose all of that if they never take their first shift, you don't have to save more than 1 or 2 of those a year.
Yeah.
And you pay for this whole thing. You pay for a year's subscription to this. So a lot of people are saying, yeah, okay, I'll give it a try. What have I got to lose? Because I'm already losing quite a bit.
You're already 8 out of 25 that, if you get down to that 25, if you could know in the example you used before of, you interview 200, you look at 200 applicants, you reach out to 100, you hire 25 and only 8 actually stay after 30 days. If you could take that 25 and say, let's do this, set them down or send it to the link to them or whatever, and have them do that test, you would know, or even sooner than that, perhaps, you would know of those 25 who are probably going to stay after a little trial and error, I'm sure, but you would know who's going to stay and who's not going to stay.
Yeah, and by knowing that, you can save a lot of money.
Yeah. So if you actually did it before you got down to your 25 candidates, you would know who you wanted to have move forward in orientation and who you didn't, we're going to just go ahead and let go.
Well, one of the reasons I jumped on this technology and have been recommending it is because they make it as easy as possible. A lot of agencies today have an online application. So
Yeah.
you go to the website, you fill out the application, and then it immediately goes to the MilliMatch website and asks the questions.
Nice.
So the vetting happens right at the beginning. So if you can get those 8 that will stay for a year,
Yeah.
by doing orientation and training with 20 instead of 25.
Yeah.
That's all it takes to improve or to mitigate your losses that you're already incurring.
Yeah, and you're right about the cost. I mean, I know for some folks it's lower and some folks it's higher, but on this level of hiring, we're not talking about executive level hiring. We're talking about CNAs, HHAs, caregivers of any kind in the senior care facility or in home care. At that level, it is about $4,000 if you count everybody's time, everybody's hourly rate that are working for you to get them there, the money you spend on orientation and the background checks and all the things that go into it, adding them to the payroll. It is about $4,000
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in there. So
right. And so if you're hiring that many people and you're only keeping a third of them or fewer, that's 4,500 times 5 or 10 or 8 or 15, depending on the size of your agency. And and the margins aren't that large to begin with.
So yeah, so I mean, if you're, we're already working in an industry where margins are not great, depending on who your payers are. And even if private pay, they can be still a challenge at times. So to lose 4,400, even to lose, 4,000, even to lose 2,500 on somebody who was just brought on board is horrible.
If you figure 2,500, they've got to work about 45 days, depending on what you're charging your client and what you're paying them. They've got to work at least 45 days to break even. If your costs really are in the $4,000 range, then they have to work 80 or 90 days before you break even. How many of these caregivers stay for a year? That percentage is pretty small. So if you're shooting for 90 days, you got to make sure you're hiring the right person.
Absolutely. So if someone's interested in knowing more about MilliMatch, or should we send them to your website to talk to you, or would you like us to give them the MilliMatch website?
Well, both. I've written 2 or 3 articles about this technology in the last few months since I discovered it. So if people register for my newsletter, which is free, they can easily find those articles. I have a search engine on the homepage at homecaretechreport.com.
All right.
And if you just type in MilliMatch, and it's real easy, it's spelled the way it sounds, MILI match. If you just type that into the search engine, you'll see the articles I've written about them. And a couple of them do have links to, and that's easy too. It's millimatch.com if they want to contact the company and learn more about it and see some of the other case studies other than the ones that I've mentioned today.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we'll make sure all of your contact information is with this video so folks can, subscribe to the newsletter and at the same time get more information about MilliMatch. So that's awesome.
Great.
All
Great.
right.
I appreciate that.
Well, let's talk about something. I think this might tie into something else you wanted to discuss today. My next question is about companies and organizations that you really think do a great job, who've influenced you, who have just really made a great impression on you as far as healthcare, technology, or whatever it might be. And I know that there's also an organization that you want to talk about with regards to COVID vaccines. So I'll let you take it from there.
Well, over the last, I hate to even think about it, but I guess it's been nearly 28 years since I started, since I was introduced to home care. And just like most people that I have met in this time, once you're introduced, it's hard to walk away.
Yeah.
It's It's a part of the healthcare system that just draws you in and makes you want to help and do more. So yeah, there have been people that I have been inspired by over the years. One of my favorite Beatles songs is the one that goes, "Some are dead and some are living." And in my life, I've loved them all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, I was introduced to this field by one of the great technology consultants that home health has ever known. Tom Williams was the head of the MAC that is now known as NGS out of Milwaukee. And then he went into consulting, and he and I built this newsletter together. He taught me everything that he knew for 10 years. And when he died, I stepped in and carried on. So I always think of him as my mentor that has influenced me the most, as I have tried to step in and fill his shoes, which has not been easy. I've been inspired by people who have started software companies and built them. I became good friends with Jeff Lewis, who has been retired after selling his company for a few years now. He taught me a lot. The founder of Kinzer, that is now acquired by and now part of WellSky, Chris Hester, approached me after I spoke at a conference one time and sat me down and said, "You know, somebody told me there's this thing called home care and they want me to write some software for it. What can you tell me about software?" So I always like to cite him as someone that I mentored, who moved on to make many times more money than I do.
That's
but there's been a number of people over the years who have gotten into home care, home health, hospice, software, and other technology, remote patient monitoring and wound care technology and the like. And the ones that have gotten into it out of patient care motivation, more than just as a business operation, are the ones who have inspired me. I've talked to so many people that said, "Hey, we want you to write about this new company we just started." And I say, "Well, tell me your story." And 9 times out of 10, it's, "Well, my mother had this experience when she was in home care or when she was in hospice, and it was such a terrible experience, I decided I was going to jump in and make it better." I hear that over and over again. And those are the people that I admire.
Yeah, absolutely. And even you hear that even in folks who start a home care agency or invest in one. They say, "Oof, we had a terrible time finding care for my mother." So I remember those days. I remember being that caregiver. So
yeah,
I was started. Yeah. I really respect and admire those people. Yeah,
and that of course is kind of leads to the one that everybody points to as their inspiration, Mark Beata, who started a company with 2 employees in a little tiny office, and has been dedicated to his employees and his patients for 30 some years, and even now retired and founder emeritus or whatever his new title is, and turning it over to his family. He has always been focused on doing the right thing because it's the right thing, not because it's what's best for me. And he's been someone that I've looked up to and tried to model myself after as well. Always keeping the patient in the front of your mind as the reason we do what we do.
Yep. And that is it's not only challenging sometimes to do that, but when you are very focused on better outcomes for your patients, it's the most rewarding piece of this whole thing.
You can get bogged down in the day-to-day, in the details. I've got my deadlines for my writing and got my sponsors and advertisers to keep happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that every once in a while, you have to come back and say, why do we do this?
Yep. Why did I get into this? Why did I start?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So tell us about the folks and the organization that you recently connected with that are trying to get.
Yeah, it's kind of related. You know, the whole idea of keeping people alive relates to this pandemic that we're suffering with for the last 18, 19 months. The National Minority Health Association won a federal grant, I think it was $11 million, to use, because the grantee or the grantor, the Health Resource Services Administration loved their proposal, which was to use home care workers as the trusted messages from trusted voices. And no one else who got the rest of this, the whole project was 125 million, but no one else who got the other portions of the grant had the idea that the National Minority Health Association had, to use home care workers to deliver the message. And so the way they decided to use the grant money was to give it away. And so the home care agency and the home care in-home worker and the person getting a vaccination shot each get a cash payment for each shot. So the person who gets the shot will get $50. The home care worker who says, hey, you should get vaccinated, here's where you should go, and helps them to get registered online and take a camera picture of their vaccination card, that home care worker gets 25. Now think about it, that home care worker probably works for 10 or 20, probably knows 10 or 20 patients or clients, right? So they could get each one of them vaccinated. And then the employer, the home care agency, gets 25 for every worker for every shot. And then you can double it, because we found out that a lot of home care workers are not vaccinated. So the National Minority Health Association set up the grant and got permission from HRSA to let the home care worker get paid for getting the shot and for encouraging a person to get the shot. So they get the 50 and the 75 if they get vaccinated themselves. And so it's been incredibly successful so far. It's a 6-month grant. So it's, I'm spreading the word for them because it's so urgent to get it done quickly. And somebody jumped on it. We, just yesterday, I interviewed a woman in Florida who has gone gung-ho with this. She has meetings. She has vaccination events at schools. She's gotten 500 people vaccinated in the Eastern Florida so far. Now think about it, 500 times 25 times 2 shots each. So yeah, she's jumped on the bandwagon and is just going crazy with this.
For a good thing, for a good cause. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, think about it. You don't want healthcare workers going into the home and bringing any kind of infection into that home. You also don't want them picking up anything in that home and bringing it back to their family. So it's critically important. And now there's mandates, right? CMS and states are telling home care, they're telling all healthcare workers they need to get vaccinated. And so all of a sudden, everybody's aware of it, and it's become far more urgent. So
this might be a good catalyst. And, I think, we just talked about recruiting and staffing shortages. And I would say that for a whole lot of home care agencies and senior facilities, they're very afraid to make it mandatory because they're already short-staffed. Now, I know some of them have, and some of them will, and it will continue to roll that way. But I think a lot of folks are afraid that if they say mandatory to work for me, people will just go down the street. So this is a great incentive to have the right education, the right message, and to give them a little financial incentive to go ahead and get that done. Because it'll be safe.
And think about it. When you're recruiting, you can say, we're one of the agencies that participates in this grant. You can make extra money over and above what we pay you if you join in our vaccination effort. So why work for them over there who aren't involved with the grant? You could work for us
and get a little bonus every time this happens.
So so we're all the way back to the original topic of recruiting and retention.
Yep. Nice. $25 bonuses every time somebody, gets
every time somebody gets a shot. Yep. The program is called Flex for Checks.
All right.
Their idea is you flex your arm, you get the shot, and then you can check off all the things you can do again because you're vaccinated.
Yep. And then, so we'll put the information on with this video for Flex for Checks as well, and send people to your newsletter. Have you written about this?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I have. I actually the leading personnel, the executive director and the COO of the association are people I have known for quite a while. And when they asked me to help spread the word, I said, sure. And so I've written about it a number of times, and you can do the same thing with my website. Use the homepage search engine and search for vaccine, search for COVID, search for Flex for Checks, and you'll find the articles that I've written explaining it.
All right. We'll make sure everybody gets there. That's awesome. All right. Last two questions. What advice would you give to senior care businesses out there?
My advice to senior care businesses, well, I have to go on the record with this, so let me think about it for a minute.
Don't be afraid of technology.
The way our world and our nation are going today, people are living longer. Here's what you need to think about. Our healthcare system is working so well that people are living long enough to experience healthcare conditions that they never did before because they died first. And so the number of people needing long-term care, either in a facility or in the home, is going to increase for two reasons. One, because they're aging into conditions that we never had to deal with before, whether it's heart or diabetes or dementia or all of the above.
True.
And they're all around my age. So the baby boomers, all 76 million of us, are going to continue to age into home care. We always talk about how many are turning 65 and becoming Medicare eligible every day. Mm-hmm. Home care doesn't take care of people my age. It takes care of people in their 80s. But they're getting there. The baby boomers are approaching that age group. And so we're not going to run out of the need for workers.
No.
So the availability of people who want to take care of the elderly is not likely to increase. So this leads me to the advice. You're going to have to do more with less, and that is made possible by technology. So remote patient monitoring, technology in the office so that you become more efficient, handheld devices that allow the in-home staff to be more efficient, do your EVV responsibilities with as little effort as possible, and keep your eye on my newsletter so that you know when the new technologies that you absolutely need are coming out. I can't tell you how many times I've done speeches from some stage at some association, and I've talked about technologies that I have written about, and people come up to me afterwards and say, "I'm so glad you told me that. I'd never heard of that."
Right. Well, like you say, we get bogged down in the day-to-day of our business, and we're trying to keep all of the things afloat that need to float around and make business successful. And oftentimes what I see is that leaves our owners and our managers of our home care agencies and other businesses sort of run out of time to learn something new because they're struggling to keep up with what's going on right now. So I would agree. Your newsletter is essential, and the whole remote patient monitoring situation. I know there's a lot of companies out there who are doing a whole lot of things, and it's becoming, I mean, I can't tell you, we get asked every time we do a website anymore to make sure we add a page about remote patient monitoring from whatever company
Yeah.
this person is dealing with. So it's become very regular and very.
And there's a new generation of it. It's much easier for the elderly people to use today than it was 20 years ago. So it's more possible to use it in such a way that you can make up for your shortage of staff, keep track of patients and clients more frequently with fewer people in the home, and pay for itself.
Yes.
If you do it right, it does actually pay for itself. I've heard a lot of arguments over the years. Oh, we tried it, it doesn't work. But there's a right way and the wrong way to do it, and it can, even though Medicare won't reimburse for it, you can charge in non-medical patient pay. You can charge the family for it, and the communication systems that you can include the family in group texts and group videos and make them feel more secure, which means they're more likely to use you than one of your competitors. So it all comes together. So yeah, my message hasn't changed in 22 years. Rely on technology.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I think we need to keep moving forward with learning new things all the time and learning how technology can help. So I'm all on board with remote patient monitoring. I know it's a business strategy, and you have to figure that part out too. But I see it being done. I see it being bundled with the pricing of home care, being bundled with a real human 2 or 3 days a week, and someone who, and then the remote patient monitoring the other times when people aren't there. And it works really well. And it also saves the client money if they're willing to, go that route, or if they can. I mean, some people are beyond that, but for the folks that can do remote patient monitoring and other technologies similar to that, fall detection, things like that, it's a real money saver for those clients who don't really need a human there all the time, but they do need somebody to check on them with real eyes and real ears a few times a week. So it does work. It just, you have to have a business strategy for it and bundle it and do things like that and pass the cost along.
Yeah.
But it does work nicely.
And do your research and shop around. The direction that it seems to be moving today is toward handheld devices that encourage communication.
Yeah.
So you can set up a team with the physician, the home care nurse, the non-medical in-home caregiver, and the family. And you can mix and match who's in on each portion of the conversation. You can bring in the pharmacist to the conversation. And then incidentally, those things connect through Bluetooth with blood pressure cuffs and weight scales.
Yes, they do.
So it's almost as though the definition that we used to have for remote patient monitoring is now incidentally added to these great communication tools.
Yep, absolutely. There's so much that we can do for ourselves and our patients and our clients out there. So great advice. I totally agree with you. I think everybody needs to keep pushing forward. And my last question is a fun one. When you have a win in life or business, how do you like to celebrate?
How do I like to celebrate after a win? I'm a writer, and so I guess my main way of celebrating is to brag about it.
Yay! That's okay.
and put it out there in my newsletter, on my Facebook page, and my LinkedIn page, and let anybody who wants to read about it celebrate with me.
Yeah.
My two favorite things that I've done in the last 20 years was when my father was in hospice and the occasion came up, a commemoration of Pearl Harbor Day. I wrote what it was like to be helping a 90-year-old who had been through World War II. I wrote a personal story. And then again, after I had been writing the newsletter for 20 years, I wrote a retrospective in the history of how it all came to be and a little tribute to Tom Williams, and the story about how the readership had grown from 500 to 5,000 to 10,000 over the years. So yeah, I guess I celebrate by going back to work and writing some more.
That's all right. It's what makes you happy and what gives you that outlet to celebrate. So we always ask that because I think we probably don't celebrate enough. But it's, it's nice to take a step back and reflect on a nice day, on a happy family, on a happy client, someone who you got a smile out of that was really overwhelmed and stressed, or, maybe it's a business client who feels so much better because of whatever thing that you were able to teach them or introduce to them. So all those things are little wins, just to, that we've done something nice for someone else. And that's a great way to celebrate. I love writing. So,
and if that sounds a little bit too self-serving and too noble, keep in mind, I also do have my favorite Pinot Noir.
Yay! That's good. Yeah. I had one of my first interviews, I had a hospice physician. I always tell the story. He picked up he said, I'll tell you how I celebrate. And he held up a bottle of tequila. And one shot of this goes a long way for me. And I was like, okay, we have had all kinds of answers. That's totally fine. That's good. So, yeah, a little glass of wine. I've had people say they jump in the ocean or dance or, whatever it is that you like to do to celebrate. We should probably do more of those things.
I sit out on my porch and I look at the sunset over Pikes Peak and drink my Pinot Noir.
That is nice. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing the show, for teaching us about better recruiting, and for telling us about the Flex for Checks program. And we'll make sure all your contact information is with this video, and we'll get it out to everybody. So thank you.
I really appreciate it, Valerie. Thank you too.